Hello everyone, welcome to video 103 which deals with AWS Lambda. This is the third video in the video series covering how to build a web application using AWS Serverless architecture. So in the first video we saw introduction to AWS Serverless. In the last video we saw the UI component of our web application. And in this video we are going to see the Lambda code which forms the basic unit of AWS Serverless architecture and our backend code and see how it works. So to look at AWS Lambda, log into your AWS console and then go to AWS Lambda service, and once you are on that service you can go ahead and create a function. So what we will do is I'm gonna show you how to create a function, what are the various configurations before, and then we will see the Lambda that is actually used for our backend code. So let's call it my test Lambda 103, and let's keep the runtime as Node.js, but you can see that there are various runtimes available: C#, Go, Java, Node.js, Python. But I'm gonna select Node.js because that's the runtime I have used for the Lambda in our current web application demo. The role, so it is very important to choose a role because that's what determines what your Lambda can do. So let me go ahead and use an existing role, and I'm going to use Lambda S3. So we will cover roles in some time, what it does, what it means, and what it means to this Lambda. But for now, I'm just going to select an existing role that I have created. And note, this is the same role that I have used in the other Lambda as well. So I'll explain what this role actually does. So once you have set all of this, go ahead and click on create function. So now that your Lambda is created, you will see this particular UI screen, and you can see an inline editor which shows you the template code that AWS provides. So you can see that when you invoke this Lambda, this is just going to send a response with status code 200 and body as hello from Lambda. So let's go ahead and quickly add some code here so that we know that it has run successfully. So let's just say console.log. This is my demo Lambda, and also I'm going to change the response to hello from Lambda from OSFG. Alright, and once that is done, you can go ahead and save it. To click on save, you can click on save button, which is at the top right hand side. So it should get saved momentarily. There we go, it is already saved. So we will try to run it and see what it prints, but before that I just wanted to go over some of the configurations that we have. So first of all, we have environment variables. So you can set some of the environment variables that might change at a later point of time, so that you decouple some of the variables that you want to use and not hard code it in the code. Again, I have used an environment variable in the actual code that is used in the actual Lambda that I'll show you in some time. So we will see how environment variables are used. Then you can tag your Lambda with any tag that you want. Now tags is something that AWS provides so that you can uniquely identify the source or search them, but not so important. Next thing is execution role. Now this is very important because, like I said before, it determines what your Lambda can do. So I have chosen an existing role, and you can see the role is Lambda S3. So let's quickly go into IAM and see what that role does. So you can type IAM and it will auto-complete it for you. And once you go into IAM console, you can go to roles, and you can see there are some set of roles that I've already created, but the one that we are interested is Lambda S3. So if you click on that, you will see what permission it has. You can see it has full access to S3 because that's how we will get a list of image files in the S3 bucket, and we have AWS Lambda execute. Now if you expand this, you will see a policy summary and then the corresponding JSON, and you can see it has CloudWatch logs. Now this is very important because the logs of the Lambda execution are posted to LogWatch, and if you do not give this permission, then it will not post any logs to CloudWatch. So make sure that you have this permission. But if you don't want this summary, you can also click on JSON and see what JSON policy corresponds to this particular role, right? So now that you know what this role does, it gives you access to S3 and it gives you access to CloudWatch logs. Let's go back to the Lambda console and let's go over some of the other settings. So we just saw execution role, then there are other settings. So Lambda takes two things. One is memory. So this is the CPU allocation for your Lambda, and then there is timeout. So you are charged based on these two things. So you can think of your charge proportional to memory multiplied by the time your Lambda takes to execute. So do not put your Lambda to have a very large memory or a very large timeout, right? Because you will be charged accordingly. So this should always be balanced based on what your requirement is, right? And since we are just printing one thing, nothing fancy, I'm just going to leave this as default. Then you have a couple of other settings like VPC. So we have not even gone into VPC, creating custom VPC and stuff like that. So we do not have to worry about this right now. But if you have your custom VPC where you have custom public and private subnets and you want to run Lambda into a private subnet to access, let's say, for example, a database that is running in your private subnet, then you have to go ahead and select your corresponding VPC. And one important thing to note here, that if you are running Lambda into your private subnet, then your default internet access to that Lambda is lost. So to have an internet access, you need to make sure that the public subnet has a NAT gateway configured and there is a route from your private subnet to that particular public subnet's NAT gateway. So that was for network. There are other things that are like self-explanatory, like debugging and audit and compliance and concurrency. So these are not so important configurations, so I'm not going to go over it. The important things are execution rule, which I explained. The other thing is basic settings, which is very important, and network, which is important if you choose to use custom VPC. Also, one more thing, if you choose a custom VPC, you'll have to go and provide the security groups and all the security related configuration related to that VPC. But we are going to keep it very simple for this video, and there is no custom VPC. So we have the internet access and all the configurations that come with it. So now that we have seen the configuration of Lambda, let's go ahead and run this Lambda. So the Lambda ideally takes parameters that come inside event. So let me go ahead actually and print event as well. Event is okay. Let's go ahead and save it. So by default, event is what is used to call that Lambda. So if you integrate your Lambda with API gateway, then that particular event which is coming in the API gateway's request will be forwarded to this Lambda. But again, that will be covered in a separate video which will cover API gateway. But for now, we are just going to print event. Now to simulate this Lambda, what you can do is there is a test button that you can use to test your Lambda. And before you do that, you need to create a test event. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to keep it as hello world template, and let's call it test event, and let's just keep the same key value pairs and click on create. Now once test event is created, you can simply click on test, and then you can see that the Lambda is successful or not. And if you click on this, you can see that the status code was 200 and the response was hello from Lambda from OSFG. Now this is something that we had changed our Lambda to do. And you can also see the event that was sent to Lambda, which is the test event that we configured some time back. And this is just a partial output that AWS shows you. But if you want to see a complete log of CloudWatch, then you can either click here, or what you can do is go to function, go to your my test Lambda 103 which we created. You can go to monitoring, and then you can click view logs in CloudWatch. And once it is loaded, it will direct you to the log stream that is used for my test Lambda. And if you click on it, you will see the logs corresponding to this particular Lambda. You can see that this is a test event it got, and this is something that we had printed. But if you do not want to go from that, you can go to CloudWatch, you can go to logs, and in this you'll see multiple log streams. The one that we care about is test Lambda 103, and inside this you can see there is one log currently, right? So if you execute it one more time, you can see again the execution is successful, and you can just refresh this, and this was 12:43, it is 12:44, so you can click on that, and you can scroll down to see the new event. It may take some time, so let's just wait for, there we go. So the new Lambda has come as well. So this is the second execution that was executed. So that's how you see the logs, and this is possible only because we had given the corresponding role and the role that we have assigned to this particular Lambda, right? So now that we know what Lambdas does, what is the configuration and how it works, and this forms the basic of your serverless infrastructure, because if you see, nowhere we have mentioned servers or any of that. We have just provided the code, and it will automatically take care of executing it, right? And let's say you have a request to run 10,000 concurrent requests that calls Lambda, then AWS will automatically handle that kind of load on its own, and you don't have to worry about provisioning this Lambda, right? So now that we know that, let's go back to our GitHub, and I'm going to show you what code we have written for our serverless Lambda. So the Lambda code goes into Lambda fetch S3 data, and if you click on it, you can see there is an index.js and a package.js. Again, this is since this is based on Node.js, there is an package.json which is needed for npm, and there is index.js. So now I'm going to show the same thing in our Visual Studio Code. So if you go to Lambdas, the directory that I just showed, you can go to index.js, and you can see this is the Lambda code that runs for our actual Lambda. So you can see that we are getting hold of AWS SDK, we are getting hold of S3 object from that particular SDK, and what we are doing in the code is essentially we are getting the bucket from the API gateway request. So if you remember our script, if you go to UX scripts and main.js, if you see this particular API, it takes a bucket name which is passed as a path parameter, and that is the same thing that gets passed to the Node.js Lambda, and that is how we get it. Again, we will see how exactly it gets mapped when we look at API gateway, but for now just know that this is the bucket that we get here. If bucket is null, we just say that hey, the request is bad, so we say internal error and just send it back. However, if we do get the bucket, then we make an S3 API call which says list object v2. Again, we send in some parameters which says the bucket name and the maximum keys as 10. And once we get that, we pass that content, and for each of the content, we push it, into an array the key of the file that we found in the S3, and that particular array is then sent to json.stringify, and then it is sent as a response, right? And status code to body is the JSON string of the array of S3 object, right? So if you go back to our serverless application, go to inspect element, go to network, and click on fetch list, then you can see that the get response is status code to body as the array of file key names that we just got from S3, right? So that's what this Lambda does. And again, if there are any error, so if there was error in getting the objects from S3, it will say so error getting data from S3, or if there are no data in S3, then we just say that there is no data found in S3, so it again returns an error code, right? So that's what our Lambda does. So once you have this Lambda, you can go ahead and go to your Lambda, and here instead of editing code, you can just say upload a zip. You can create a zip of your Lambda code and upload it here. I'm not gonna show you how to do that as of now, because we have a separate video lecture just to show how CI/CD works, where this is automatically taken care by code pipeline. So in that I will show you how this is done. But for now, what you can do is, if you really want to test out, you can just copy that index.html and just paste it in the inline code, and then test it out to see how it works. Now let's go back to our function and fetch S3 data that we have created, and this is what it is. So if you go and see, it takes one of the environment, which is author, which is Thakur, which is me. I've just added this so that you get an idea of how environment variable works. And then again, we are using CI/CD code pipeline to automatically create this. So I will show there as well how you can automate add environment variables in the code, right? And there are some tags that I have used. Again, this is again taken care by code pipeline. So again, this is not super important, so you can skip this. It's okay if you do not know this as well. Next important thing that I already mentioned is the execution role. You can see there's the same execution role I mentioned some time back, which is Lambda S3, and the basic settings and VPC are all default because we do not need that, right? So now let's quickly go to our logs and see how it works. So you can go to monitoring and you can see view logs in CloudWatch. You should be able to see each execution of this particular CloudWatch. So you can see it was run last run 9:20 12:48, which was 2 minutes before. This is exactly when we ran the AWS Serverless application, this one. But we can try it one more time. Let's go ahead and click on fetch list, and there we go. We got the get response of this. So now if you go back to CloudWatch for your Lambda S3 data, which is this fetch S3 data, and if you refresh this, then it should be at 12:51. It's sometime concatenate. So let's go into this, and so you can see this is the latest request that we have received from the Lambda. So each API gateway request that you execute, this Lambda will get executed, and you can see the corresponding logs here. Okay, so that's all for Lambda. I hope you understood how Lambda works, and how you can create a Lambda, how you can run a Lambda, how you can test a Lambda without actually calling the API gateway, and do the testing before you actually execute it. So in the next video, what I'll show you is how we can use API gateway to call this Lambda, and how it all integrates into a single piece. So thank you and stay tuned.